I want to be clear about something before I start. I'm not the kind of person who believes in things. I mean that seriously. I spent 11 years as a structural engineer. My entire career was built on load-bearing facts, on knowing exactly why things hold and exactly why they fail. So when I tell you what happened in that house, I need you to understand who's telling it. Not someone who wanted to find something, not someone who went looking, someone who had no choice but to stop pretending the math added up. The house on Delford Street was a 1940s two-story Colonial. 4 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, original hardwood throughout. I bought it in September as a rental investment. The previous tenant had vacated cleanly, no damage, no disputes, lease simply not renewed. The landlord before me, an older man named Greaves, sold the whole portfolio without much explanation beyond simplifying. I didn't push. The price was good. The bones were solid. I moved in temporarily while my condo renovation finished. Just a few weeks, I told myself. Keep the heat on, keep the place occupied, sign the new tenant lease by November 1st. The upstairs was empty. I was sleeping in the ground floor bedroom, the one that had been converted from a sitting room just off the kitchen. Practical choice, easier to lock up and leave. I kept the upstairs door at the base of the stairs closed. The first night, I heard it around 2 a.m. Footsteps. Not a creak, not the settling grunt of old joists in cooling weather which I know intimately, which has a signature, a single complaint from one direction, finished, resolved. This was sequential. Left, right, crossing the ceiling above me from the north wall toward the center of the room. I lay still for a moment. Then I got up, took the flashlight from my bag and went upstairs. Empty. All 4 rooms empty, windows sealed, no animal entry points visible. I checked every closet, every corner. Nothing. I went back to bed and told myself, old house, unusual airflow pattern, pressure differential between floors. It was a reasonable explanation. I wrote it in my site notebook the way I'd log an anomaly on a project. Observed, investigated, no cause found, monitoring. The second night it happened again. Same time, give or take. Same path above me. I noticed this time that it stopped at the same point, roughly above the foot of my bed, before going quiet. I went upstairs again. Empty again. The third night I set my phone to record audio and left it on the nightstand facing up. When I played it back the next morning, I heard myself breathing. I heard the house. I heard, at 2:11 a.m., a faint rhythmic sequence that could charitably be called footsteps. Could be. The kind of could be that you play 3 times with your volume at maximum, jaw tight. I sent the file to a friend who does acoustic consulting. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, old house, thermal expansion, probably a long board running the length of the floor above flexing as the heat cycles down overnight. He sent me a diagram. It was a good explanation, genuinely plausible. I almost let it be that. But here's the thing about being an engineer. You don't accept plausible, you accept verified. And something about the rhythm was wrong for thermal expansion. Thermal flex is irregular. It responds to the rate of temperature drop, which varies. What I was hearing was metered, consistent. 1 beat I timed it eventually. Every 1, 3 seconds. Left, pause, right, left, pause, right. Like something being very deliberate about where it placed its weight. On the 5th night, the footsteps were louder. Not dramatically louder, not a horror movie crash, just more present, more mass behind them. I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling and tracked the path and felt, for the first time, something I hadn't felt since I was maybe 7 years old. I felt afraid of a room I couldn't see. I got up. I stood at the bottom of the stairs with my hand on the door and I did not go through it. I stood there for what I think was 4 minutes. I don't know what I was waiting for. Permission, maybe, or proof that I was being ridiculous. The sound had stopped. The house was quiet. I went back to bed. The next morning, I pulled the upstairs subflooring schematic from the property documents. Original 1940s construction, inch, tongue, and groove for over 2x8 joists at 16-inch centers. I went upstairs with a flashlight and a steel rule, and I checked every board I could access. No warping. No separation. No defect that would produce consistent sequential sound under thermal load. I also found something I hadn't noticed before. In the largest bedroom, the one directly above mine, There was a worn path in the hardwood floor. Not damage, not a stain, a path. The kind of discoloration that comes from decades of foot traffic following the same route, the oils from skin working into old wood, the finish worn to something softer and slightly darker. It ran from the north wall, roughly where the footsteps always began, across the room to a spot just above the foot of my bed. It stopped there, at a faint circular mark in the wood, about 2 feet in diameter where the finish was worn completely away. Someone had stood in that spot. Had stood there often enough for long enough that they left an impression in 40-year-old hardwood. I called Greaves that afternoon. He picked up on the second ring, which surprised me. There was a long pause after I introduced myself. Then he said, in a voice that was carefully flat, "What specifically are you calling about?" I described the mark. I described the path. I mentioned the sounds. He said, "The previous tenant complained too. I told her it was the floor." I asked him what he actually thought it was. Another pause. Longer this time. "My father lived in that room," he said. "For the last 4 years of his life, he had a routine. Insomnia. He'd get up and walk. Always the same path. Back and forth, and then he'd stand at the window." A pause. There's no window on that end of the room. It was filled in during the 80s renovation, but he'd stand there anyway. Stand there and look at something I never could see. He did that for 4 years. I asked when his father died. "In that room," Greaves said. 11 years ago, standing at that window that isn't there anymore." I thanked him. I don't know why. He hung up without saying goodbye. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed and watched the ceiling and waited. I'd started sleeping with my phone face up and the clock visible. Left, right! Left, right! The same path, the same meter. But heavier now. Heavier than they'd been the night before, heavier than the night before that, as if whatever was making them was becoming more solid, more certain of its weight in that space. I tracked them to the spot above the foot of my bed. They stopped. And then, for the first time, there was something else, a sound I can only describe as pressure. Not a creak, not a knock, a low, sustained compression in the boards above me, the way a floor sounds when someone shifts their weight from foot to foot. Standing still, but not quite still. Adjusting. The way a person stands when they are watching something and they want to see it better. I did not move. I did not breathe. It lasted 47 seconds. I counted. Then it stopped and the house was quiet and I stared at the ceiling until the light came through the curtains. I want to tell you I packed up that morning and left. That would make this a sensible story. Instead, and I'm not proud of this, I went upstairs and I stood in that bedroom and I looked at the worn circle in the floor and I put my feet inside it. Just to see. The way an engineer checks his own assumptions by replicating the conditions. The filled-in window was behind me. I know, because I'd looked at the exterior enough to know roughly where it had been. Plastered over, painted flat, no sign of it from the outside. But standing in that circle with my back to the wall, I could feel, and I know how this sounds, I could feel the orientation of it, a rectangular absence, not cold, not wind, just the specific quality of space that has been closed over something. I turned around and faced the wall, and I understood, finally, why someone would stand there every night for 4 years, because from that spot, looking at that wall, you could see my bedroom below. Not literally. There was nothing to see, but the geometry of it. The position, the angle. You would be looking down at exactly where a person sleeps. He had been watching the room below him for 4 years, before me and before the last tenant and before whoever came before her. Standing there watching an empty room, or waiting for it to stop being empty. I moved my bed that night, dragged it to the opposite wall. It felt rational. It felt like something I could control. The footsteps still came at 2011, still traveled the same path, still stopped in the same spot. But after the 47-second pause, there was something new. A slow rotation in the sound, the particular acoustic signature of a person turning, weight shifting, adjusting stance, facing a different direction. I measured in the morning. The spot on the ceiling directly above where I'd moved my bed was unmarked, unscuffed, fresh finish, undisturbed for decades. But there were new sounds in the wood when I pressed my ear to the floor. Not footsteps, not yet. The soft, patient sound of finish beginning to wear.